So the major financial straits of the company began really when it's figured out that Jay had been lying to you, and it has to hit you directly in the face. I mean, you realize, oh God, every decision we've made so far has been based on fictitious numbers. It turns out Jay was the original fiction writer here on the program. But at this point, you have Health South and Richard Scrutchy to fall back on. And if I remember correctly, Dixie Carter was your PR rep, and that's kind of it at that point, right?
Yes, correct.
And we've talked about how the fourth pay-per-view from Total Nonstop Action featured the Tennessee Titans jumping the rail and becoming part of the action. And ultimately, when you're looking for a big bailout and you're making the pitch, you've sort of told the story that newspaper coverage that you got in the Tennessean about the Titans is something that really piqued the interest of Bob Carter. But how worried are you about and let's just time out from the business here for a minute. Like just personally, you explained here on the show, you went quote unquote all in, pardon the pun, but you're financially invested with everything you have, with the exception of what's in your retirement account and your equity in your house. So this is substantial and it has to be stressful, but I know you have a different point of view on a lot of things. So what do you remember thinking? How stressed were you? Is this 10 out of 10?
No, not 10 out of 10, but you know, it's, I have the luxury today. What is this? 20 years later, 19 years later. So looking through it with those lenses, but Conrad, and you're not too far removed from 34 or 35 years of age, but at that age and stage of my career, I looked at things differently. I don't say, as they say, young and dumb and, you know, the rest of that, but I did look at it differently. And, you know, you made the comment, I think you phrased it, fall back on Richard. Richard was my partner. Health South was my partner. And yes, it was a kick in the nuts to get that information from Jay. But, you know, I've always had the mindset since I was, as long as I can remember, a young kid, you know, getting cut from a basketball team. I'll show them. And I did the next year. So as a young man, I mean, as a child, I always had get knocked down, get back up, get knocked down, get back up. And I had that mindset, and I was not happy with Jay, but it was without question and an incredible, very quick learning experience on not boardroom meeting type stuff, but like actuals of picking up the phone and calling San Diego cable operator and calling Wichita, Kansas cable operator. And I could reel off 20, 30, 40, 50 more, having real conversations. So getting educated. But, you know, the Hosman thing was ground. I mean, it rocked our world in so many ways, but, you know, Richard, knowing the conversations that I had with him and his financial people and his executive assistant, that, okay, what are next steps? There's nothing we can do about the past, like zero. So how are we going to figure this out? And so that was the mindset through all of that. And, you know, even to, I don't want to get too far ahead, but getting out to Dallas and having that conversation and having the Tennessee Titans, as much as a, you know, negative the Hosman side was, the Titans story and that was real, that was tangible. It was not a fictitious boardroom idea that we created excitement and front page news and all that. Was it the end all be all? But no, we had picked ourselves up and you know, early in our game had the mindset of persevering.
Immediately though, we go into the cost cutting routine. The Nashville Fairgrounds is going to become the home of TNA. It's going to be renamed the Asylum. And, you know, once upon a time, this was supposed to be a touring brand, and we were supposed to be on the road booking different arenas. And now it feels like it's what's the old thing? Necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
Anyway, your budget for talent is obviously cut way back. Are you the one reaching out to talent and explaining the cancellations or renegotiations, the pay changes, the flight changes, or are you tasking Bob Ryder to do that? What does that look like with the talent end of
I'd
things?
say with north of 50% of the talent, I was making the calls. Bob was making the calls. My dad might have made a call or two. I don't recall specifics, but it was a full court press. When we were reeling in and creating napkin math, like we used that term last week, like, okay, let's figure that out. In the very best case scenario that was written apart as far as the touring, the live event gate, what was, maybe cover production cost. The strategy was the pay-per-view buys. So reeling it in, and just because, my dad's entire career was basically Memphis studios. So, getting a fixed location. Our goal was obviously cut cost up at the priority, but how are we going to get over to the fairgrounds? It's in our backyard, but how are we going to make that studio? Again, not that we were competing against Raw, but that's what the world had known: Raw, Nitro, SmackDown, Thunder, and all that. So we knew that was going to be a challenge on our limited budget.
So chat me up about, when you're saying you were making these conversations, I assume, just knowing you, honesty is the best policy, blah, blah, blah. But you can be transparent to your own detriment. I mean, you want to be positive, but you always take a glass half full approach. So I'm curious, this has to be heartbreaking for a lot of talent who felt like, oh man, this is the new big thing. This is the new WCW. A few weeks in, they get this call and they think, well, it's over. I knew it was too good to be true. A lot of the guys can't help but gravitate to that way of thinking, I'm sure. So I'm asking, what did your presentation sound like, and how are you sort of trying to keep things positive on that call?
I want to dig up Conrad, and I think I still have it somewhere in my house. But anyway, my dad wrote this is probably a year into the relationship with Panda, but something you just said that sort of piqued my interest was, he basically wrote a pretty lengthy letter, and the title of the letter was Mind of a Wrestler, just how the wrestling mind works. And although it's, you're asking me the question, and how did I frame it with the talent? So you sort of have to put it in context and truly say, okay, what was the first conversation or the beginning conversations? And in our very best scenario, like literally Scott Hall, Ken Shamrock, I'm just trying to think of some of the top names we talked about from the very beginning. All of those conversations, best case scenario, we were offering them 52 dates or 26 dates out of the gate. So nobody, the top guy, it was not a full-time living, but was there some hope? Maybe year 2, year 3. Yes. So it wasn't quite the letdown for the majority. And at the end of the day, I wasn't calling them to tell them there's no more work. And I don't even know how much we reduced, but we did, I'm sure, across the board. I'm sure me and my dad and probably even Bob Ryder said, hey, are we going to cut everybody across the board approximately? But if a guy's making, and I'm just saying, $150, you can't cut him 25%, whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's hard. There is a floor to this.
Yeah, exactly. So without that, I say all that to say that people, what they did want to hear is me to say it's over.
Right.
And that's about it. And so telling them that it's not over, but hey, here's the financial struggles that we're going through, and we're going to a fixed location. That's it. Top line stuff, essentially.